Welcome everyone. I am Julie Atkinson and I work at the University of Alaska Anchorage, the Center for Human Development, and I co-chair the Sexual Health SIG for AUCD with, and a SIG is our special interest group, with Lindsay Mullis, who's also joining us today, and Lindsay's from the University of Kentucky. The purpose of our SIG is to connect people with resources and each other, and so we're hoping that through today's webinar, again, we're providing resources to professional, to staff, to self-advocates, individuals in the community around sexuality. Anna, can we go to the next slide? This is our second webinar in the series Sex Talks for Self-Advocates. And I want to go ahead and introduce our three presenters that will be speaking with us today. First is Max Barrows. He is the Outreach Director for Green Mountain Self-Advocates. That is a position that he's held since 2007. He mentors youth and adults with developmental disabilities to speak up for themselves and become leaders. Green Mountain Self-Advocates is a lead partner of the Self-Advocacy Resource and Technical Assistance Center, SARTEC. Max leads SARTEC's technical assistant team, assisting local and state self-advocacy organizations across the nation. Max connects people on all levels, advocating for true inclusion of people with developmental disabilities. In his work, he advances the message that when you meet an individual with a disability, presume competence. He received a White House Champions of Change Award for his work in 2015. Max is an accomplished self-advocate from Vermont who served as a board member for Self-Advocates Becoming Empowered from 2008 to 2016. Our next presenter is Catherine McLaughlin. Go to the next slide, please. Catherine is a national expert and trains individuals, staff, and parents on sexuality and developmental disabilities. She teaches sexuality education to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, as well as trains them to be peer sexuality educators themselves. Catherine is the author of an agency and a school curriculum entitled Sexuality Education for People with Developmental Disabilities. And she has developed two online training courses, one to train professionals entitled Developmental Disability and Sexuality 101, and one for parents entitled Talking to Your Kids, Developmental Disabilities and Sexuality. If you'd like to contact Catherine, you can do that through her website at www.elevateustraining.com. Catherine, if you want to type that into the chat box so people could see that, that would be great. That's an afterthought. And our last presenter certainly is Erica Thomas. If we could go to our next slide. Erica is a health educator for the Developmental Disabilities Administration Health Initiative, housed at Georgetown University Center for Child and Human Development, a university center for excellence in developmental disabilities in Washington, D.C. She serves as a liaison between family members, healthcare professionals, and community providers that support people with disabilities. Erica develops and implements healthcare information curriculum and educations on a variety of wellness topics, including sexuality, for people with disabilities and their support teams. She is the faculty team leader and mentor of first-year medical students at Georgetown University, where she prepares future doctors to support and provide excellent healthcare for people with disabilities. Erica actively collaborates with state and local advocacy groups to deliver her message of wellness of the whole person. When she's not advocating for people with disabilities or promoting sexuality education in the community, she enjoys traveling the world and taking long naps. And then just a few items before we get into the presentation in terms of setting the stage. If we could go to our next slide. Throughout our presentation, our panelists will be using person-first language. And when we are, and they're sharing quotes from individuals, the questions for the webinar have been based upon people's questions. We are using their wording and honoring what they have written and how they've written their questions. We'll also be using medical terminology. Certainly there are different ways to do it, but those are how we are going to focus today on those. Next, in terms of setting the stage on our next slide, we want to recognize that certainly that we're talking about very personal topics, and certainly some of the content may be uncomfortable, may bring up memories of maybe something that has happened in your past that was, a bad memory of something. If that happens and you need someone to talk to, if you're not there with someone else, we have on the line, or excuse me, on the web, on the screen, and also in the chat box, Lindsay's going to put in the number for the crisis call center. So if something does come up and you need to talk to someone, please reach out to them. They have trained professionals there who will help you if that were to happen. And one of the last things we want to talk about is our chat box. We want participants to be engaged in our presentation today. And so at the very bottom of the screen, if you guys are on the web and not just based on the phone, at the bottom you can see that there is a chat function. It's a bubble with 3 clouds. If you go to the next slide, we have a picture of it. You can click on that bubble, that thought bubble, and it will open up the chat box. And there you can type in questions, comments. If you want to send a question in more anonymously that doesn't come to everyone, you can send questions directly to Lindsay Molis. You can see Lindsay's been actively putting information in the chat box for everyone. You can click on her name and you can send a private message just to Lindsay. So at the end, if there's a question that you have that you maybe don't want to put out there to everyone, you can certainly send it to Lindsay and she will read those for our presenters towards the end of the webinar today. And then just 1 or 2 last things about our webinar and how it will work. The questions for today came from a survey that has been out. It's entitled Sex Talk for Self-Advocate Survey. It is an anonymous survey where individuals can ask questions that they have about relationships and sexuality. So the questions today and the discussion that our panelists will have are drawn from the information that was gathered in this survey. And certainly this survey is still open, so if you have more questions and want to add your questions, we are planning future webinars and we are still collecting those questions. So with that, I'm going to go to the next slide and I'm going to turn it over to Max to go ahead and get us started today.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm glad that I am presenting to all of you today. So to kick things off, the first, question that was asked is, of course, what is sexual self-advocacy? And it's an interesting question. It all has, the pieces of self-advocacy, like speaking up, being proud of who you are, learning new things, making your case, making decisions, learning from your mistakes. But when you think of sexual self-advocacy, it can be more difficult than, regular self-advocacy. Just for example, telling your boyfriend or girlfriend what movie you want to see is a whole lot easier than telling a person what you want to do when having sex and what you do not want to do in that regard. Next slide. Next slide. So, other examples of sexual self-advocacy are like feeling comfortable meeting people, flirting, and asking someone to dance. Sexual self-advocacy is like all about being free about your sexuality, like if you're gay, straight, or lesbian. I would say knowing how to deal with someone pressuring you to do something sexually you don't want to do is a part of sexual self-advocacy. Privacy, that is very important, so speak up for it. Knowing about birth control and safe sex. and dealing with your parents when they don't agree. So, I mean, that's what I came up with so far, and I'm wondering if Catherine, if you have anything to add to that.
No, I was thinking, I really like what you've added to that definition. Is that me making that noise?
Oh no, yeah, I can't hear a
Can
noise.
you?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. Good. All right. Yeah. So the last sex talk webinar we did, we had more about relationships, and Max has really expanded the definition more. So I think that's wonderful because there's so many different pieces to being a sexual self-advocate. And we're going to talk about more of those today.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Back to you, Max.
All right. So I'm just going to go through like the recap of our first sex talk webinar for those who were not on it. And so the topic was on relationships, and it focused, you know, pretty much for webinar one, like self-advocates. What happened was it just, people asked us like 6 questions. And what I'm going to do is just briefly go over the 6 questions and give a short answer here. So, you know, 1 sentence was, you know, given to answer each question. And the best plan is to click on the link and listen to the first webinar for more details. So you'll see the link up there if you want to hear the first webinar we did. So the first question that was asked of us on webinar 1 was, how do I meet someone? And the answers that came up were, you know, join a group. You can join a group, put yourself out there in your town. Some people meet others through social media, and, you know, watch our first webinar if you can, learn how to be safe online. Another is you need to decide who you're interested in. It can be someone of the opposite gender or even someone of the same gender. The next question that was asked was, how do you know if someone is your boyfriend or girlfriend? And so, you know, someone who has said they are interested in you is what it is, you know, and make sure you get consent first. You know, that means that both people agree that you are in a relationship together. The next question that was asked, how do I talk to my partner? You know, be honest, open, kind, respectful, listen well, and then think about how you like to be talked to yourself. Next slide. Next slide, please. Alrighty. So the next question that was asked on webinar 1 is a non-disabled person at risk of having sex with a disabled person? And so many people with disabilities, you know, have active sex lives just like people without disabilities. And so there's your answer to that. The next question was, will I get in trouble if I date a person with a disability? The answer to this is no, as long as you treat the person with dignity and respect and get consent first. The next question that was asked of us on slide 1 was, the webinar 1 was, how do you come out as LGBTQIA? And that means lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, and asexual. And, you know, many people start out by telling a friend, and it would be someone that they trust. But you decide who to tell, and don't feel you have to label yourself. Next slide. So yeah, I think that here's a link if you want to watch slide, our first webinar, and I strongly recommend it because it has a lot of good information on there. So don't feel like you missed out if you did not get to it. There's the link right there. So with that said, next slide. So consent, I mentioned that word on the previous slide. What is consent? You must ask first. This is what it means. You must ask first. Both people must say yes. Sexual acts should feel good to both people. You can say no at any time. Giving consent once does not mean the answer is always yes. And just remember, if you are not sure, ask. And really, the word consent is just another way of saying getting a yes without it. Really, I would say getting a yes without using force or pressure also goes into consent. And next slide, please. Consent, I was going to say, is another word for permission. So what it means is getting a yes that is freely chosen. And what we mean by freely chosen is it means no lies, no threats, no pressure, and no force. Next slide, please. Alrighty, so when we talk about consent, each state has a different age of consent. I'm sure you know what all that means. Also, many states have laws stating that people with intellectual and developmental disabilities can't consent. And I want to make clear that we do not agree with those laws. And some agencies require people to pass a test before they can consent. And we do not agree with those laws, those policies as well. Next slide. Alrighty, next slide, please. So the next question here is, what is sex and how do I do it? So what is sex? Many, when people hear the word sex, what first comes to mind, and this was the case with me too, back when I didn't know much about it, is sexual intercourse. But we are here to tell you that it's more than that. And of course, the second part of the question is, how do I do it? The right way, I can think of is really as long as, there is consent and you are, safe and it's legal and you use protection. Next slide.
All right, I think it's my turn, Max. So we got some great questions. So the two that I'm going to talk about right now are, what are normal sex activities and what does types of sex mean? And you can see on the slide that I put this little quote here: sometimes I pretend to be normal, but it gets boring, so I go back to being me. And what we had all talked about before around this question is there is no normal around sexual activities, and people have different ideas about what they're okay with and not okay with. And so what's important is figuring out what you believe and what you think is okay and not okay. And also there's some common ways that people are sexual, and I'll go through those in just a minute. But figuring out what you and your partner like is what's important. And if you and your partner like a sexual act, and it's consensual, like Max was saying, then that's normal, right? That's normal for you. So there's many different ways that people are sexual, and the first way I'm going to just briefly talk about is something called solo sex. So sex by yourself, with yourself, self-stimulation and masturbation. And Erica's going to talk more about that after we go through some of these other slides. So we're going to get more into that. But there's lots of ways that people are sexual, and it's really varies. So rubbing sexual parts together or on another part of somebody's body is a way that people are sexual because it feels good. Sometimes using their hand on the sexual part is a way that somebody is sexual with a partner. Or oral, using their mouth on the sexual part, is another way that people are sexual. Anal, where you insert something into the anus as a way of being sexual. And then Max mentioned earlier this idea of sexual intercourse, and that many people think that sex means the penis goes in the vagina, or penile vaginal sex. But as you can see, there's lots of other ways that people are sexual, and not every couple there's a penis and a vagina. And so people who are gay or lesbian also have sex as well. So really thinking about what's okay for you and your partner is what's really important. We can go to the next slide. So the next question coming up was a really great question. Is sex like it is in the movies, right? So we don't know. We don't talk a lot about sex in our classes or even in our families, or, because it's a private topic and we don't really have ways to learn about it. And that's part of why we're doing these webinars. But really, when we see sex in the movies, it isn't real. Like anything in the movies, people are acting. And the thing with sex in the movies is it makes sex look so easy and nothing bad ever happens, right? So the person doesn't lose their erection. That never happens in the movies. Or someone doesn't have an orgasm. That would never happen in the movies. Rarely do we see people get pregnant or a sexually transmitted disease, even if they're not using protection, or sexual assault and rape, unless it's a movie about that. But there are, we would never know that there are some negative things that can happen with sex. And sometimes when it's shown in the movie, it just makes it seems like everything goes so well, everyone is happy and satisfied every time. There's never any problems. And that's not necessarily the case. Next slide, please. And when we're looking at movies and thinking, gosh, I have to look like that person, or I have to be able to perform like that person, and everything has to go perfectly, we start to put a lot of pressure on ourselves to do it like it's done in the movies. And this can make us become really anxious and uncomfortable with sex because we feel like there's a certain way that it has to be done. And real sex can be awkward and can sometimes not go well. And it doesn't mean it won't ever go well, but sometimes people don't realize that it's something that you actually have to learn how to be sexual. And great sex takes knowing your body and what you like, and good communication between partners, and practice too. It's actually a skill that people develop. So that question brought up a lot of really good points around how do we learn about this, and are there the sex in the movies can put some pressure on us, and it's okay to take your time and learn and be a sexual person in the way that you want to be sexual. So I think Erica's up next, where she's going to move more into the masturbation and self-stimulation. The next slide.
Hello, everyone. It's good to see you all. Thanks for hanging out with us for our second sex talk. I'm going to talk to you first about public and private places. So the question came up of where should I have sex? So if you've had this question before, it's okay. You're not the only one. I get that question a lot, and I'm sure the other folks on our panel have had that question come up before. So just keep in mind, I like to say the 2 P's. So you have public places and you have private places. So a public place is a place where you're not alone, other people can see you. And a private place is a place where you can be by yourself. So think of in a room with the door closed. And so when you're in this place, you're either there alone or you're in the room with someone or other people who you want to be in the room with. So everybody, if you have access to the group chat, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions and you can type your response in to the chat window. So what are some examples of a public place? So remember, a public place is where you are seen by other people. Good, I'm seeing the park, car, bus, the mall, yep. Wonderful, at work, restaurant, great, movies. So even if it's dark in a movie theater and no one can see you, is it okay to have sex in a movie theater? I'm seeing a bunch of no's, wonderful. Okay, so give me some examples of a private place. So remember, a private place is where you can close a door and you can either be alone or you choose the people who are in the space with you. Bedroom, yep. In your home bathroom with the door closed. What about a hotel room? Okay. So we're talking about public and private places. What can you do in public? If you're in public and let's say you're with your sweetie or with your friends or whoever else, someone who you're into, what can you do in public? Kiss, hold hands, short kiss, quick smooch, hug, yeah. All right, so what about in private? What can you do in private? So remember, the door's closed, you're in there alone, or the people who you choose or person who you choose to be in the room with you. Okay. Touch each other. Touch partners' private parts when you're in a private place. Yes. French kiss. Yep. Whatever you and your partner want. Yes. So when Max talked about consent, so both people saying yes. So when you're in a private place, you can do whatever you want to do as long as there's consent. Very good. Wonderful. Okay, so now I have a trick question for you. Let's say that you live at home and you have roommates. Can you have sex on your sofa? And it is your own home. Right, so someone said it's a public place and other people are there. So even though you have your own home, if you share it with roommates or you share it with your parents, it's still your sofa, your kitchen, and other places where we see in the movie sometimes when people have sex, ends up being a public place. All right, Great job. Can I have the next slide, please? So we kind of covered this one about where we should have sex. So just a quick yes or no in the chat box. Should we have sex at the mall? Right. Public restroom? No. What about in your bedroom? That's the yes. What about at your job? No. The back of a car? That's a no. Your hotel room? That's a yes. On your sofa at home and you live by yourself, is that okay? Yes. What about on an elevator? Very nice. What about in the basement of your home with the door closed? That should be yes. And what about on the kitchen table at your mom's house? Oh, someone says yes, unless there are spiders in the basement. That's a good one. Okay. All right. So we're not having sex on the kitchen table at our mom's house. Can I have the next slide, please? Great job on those examples. So the next slide is about masturbation and self-stimulation. And just before we hop into this, I want you to keep a couple of things in mind. So masturbation is natural and it's normal. A lot of times people say that people are going to get in trouble if they masturbate. As long as you're masturbating in a private place, so again, like we just learned, that's in a place where you can close the door behind you and you can be by yourself or in the company of people who you choose to be with, it's fine. So masturbation means it means you touch yourself. People masturbate because they like the way it feels. You can use your hand or a device or a sex toy. And again, there's absolutely nothing wrong with masturbation. So again, you won't get in trouble for it. You're not going to hell. So it's fine. Masturbation is a great way to learn about your body and the way you enjoy being touched, because sometimes maybe you haven't had any type of interaction with another person, and you might want to know, you're kind of testing the waters to see what it is you like, then you can tell someone else how you like to be touched. It can be relaxing, sensual, and fun. So really quickly in the chat box, where can you masturbate? Anyone? So yes, my own home in private, that's a great place to masturbate. And just some, Catherine told us about some different types of sex. So with masturbation, it can be alone by yourself and you're touching yourself, or there can be something that's called mutual masturbation. And that means that you and your partner touch each other. Great, I'm seeing at home in private, bedroom, bathroom, and shower. Yes, absolutely. And then just some things to keep in mind. Think about who you can talk to, someone you trust. It might be a family member, it might be a friend, it might be your support staff. But if you need help with masturbation, if you need someone to talk to, and then there might be a situation where you need help, like to get yourself set up. So you might need to prop yourself up with a pillow or something like that. So just in case you need to ask for help, make sure that you have someone you trust who you can talk to about that. All right, can I have the next slide, please? So we'll continue with masturbation and self-stimulation. And always keep in mind, there's no right way or wrong way. So again, it's whatever feels good to you. You can be naked or you can have your clothes on. You don't have to have an orgasm. Again, it's whatever makes you feel good and brings you joy. All you need is a plan and some energy, and be creative. Do what you like, and again, do what feels good to you. And just again, like I said, you masturbate in a private place. A woman cannot get pregnant if she masturbates. So, and also masturbation isn't pity sex. Again, it's something that feels good to you and feels right for you. Next slide, please. So we had a question about the proper way to clean various sex toys. So I thought that I would talk to you really quickly about sex toys, what they are, who uses them, and so on. So just like we say up here, sex toy quickie. So what is a sex toy? It's an object used for sexual stimulation. Many are designed to resemble human genitals. So you might have seen like dildos, so something in the shape of a penis. There are things that are in the shape of a vagina, that's something a penis can be inserted into. They can vibrate or not. And then there are many types, shapes, sizes, colors, and materials. So again, we probably have heard of a vibrator and a dildo. So this one in the middle right here with the three of them together, that's actually a necklace, and you wear it around your neck as a pendant. So down in the corner on the left-hand side of the screen, that pink sex toy is inserted into the vagina. And on the phone, you can actually use it as a remote control. So there's an app for it, and you can push the button and it can vibrate and stimulate you. At the bottom, we see like the underwear. See the little hole in the front? A dildo can be placed in there for stimulation. And then also there's just a feather duster on there that can give certain sensations. Then at the top corner, that is something that's inserted into the vagina. So again, sex toys come in all shapes and sizes. So the next question, who uses them? Anyone who chooses to. So remember, as long as it feels good to you, as long as if you're using it with your partner and the two of you consent to it, you can use it, and it's trial and error. So no one, you can read the instructions on the package or whatever else, but again, it's whatever feels good and whatever feels right to you. And then where would you get one? So you can buy them online, you can visit your local sex shop. And if at the end of the presentation, there's a resource list, and I listed a bunch of different places you can go to buy things online, and it'll come to your home in a discrete package. So you won't know that it's a sex toy. It won't say sex toy on the outside of it. So no one will ever know that you have one. And if you're interested in knowing more about sex toys, if you would like for that to be a question on the next webinar, then you can let us know in the chat. Next slide, please. And so the question came up, what is the proper way to clean various sex toys? So the first thing that you would want to do, of course, is to read the instructions on the package. So when you get the sex toy, it'll tell you how to take care of it. It'll tell you how to clean it, if it uses batteries, how to replace the battery. So all of that information should be in the package. If it was purchased online, a lot of times, like if you go on Amazon, for example, a lot of people often will put questions on there about particular products that were purchased or give comments about it. So you might want to check there for the online questions and reviews to get information about it. Your question might be in there. And then if all else fails, you can ask someone. So talk to someone at the store, an online seller, a trusted staff, family member, friend, etc. So whoever you feel comfortable with talking to. Next slide, please. And then continued with, oh, and I made this little picture myself on the side. I enjoyed it, so I hope you guys enjoyed it too. So again, continuing with the proper way to clean a sex toy. So just some general guidelines. And again, read your package information or whatever else, just to make sure with silicone, you want to wash it with soap and water, or you can put it in your dishwasher. You can boil it in water for 10 minutes to disinfect it. Glass, you want to wash it with soap and water. And you don't want to expose it to extreme temperature. So you don't want to put glass in the dishwasher, for example, because it'll warp, or like the shape, it'll get bit out of shape. Pyrex is heat resistant glass, so you can boil that one. That one is safe, so you can put it in the dishwasher or wash it by hand. Then you have stainless steel, so you can boil it in hot water. You can put it in bleaching water and rinse it thoroughly, or you can wash it in the dishwasher. So again, those are some general guidelines on how to take care of your sex toy. And again, ask someone, go online, talk to the person in the store if you have any questions. And I think that's it for me.
Yeah, I think I'm going to do the next piece, and I see that we're running out of time a little bit, but I'll go through these slides quickly, and then we'll have time for questions. So we wanted to talk about pleasure, and Erica talked a little bit about it when she was talking about masturbation, but also about safety, and probably the Sex Talk 3 will get more into some of the safety pieces. But just to start off, sexual pleasure can lead to an orgasm. And Erica mentioned that when she was talking about self-stimulation. And what an orgasm is it's a buildup of sexual feelings. And then it's a release of those feelings. And when the person releases those sexual feelings, there's muscles that contract. And it's really a very pleasurable experience, and different hormones are released, and can feel really, really good. And some people feel the orgasm in their sexual parts, and some people feel it all over their body, and it's really different for different people. Some people can have really tiny orgasms, and it can be different at different times. If they're with a partner or by themselves, it can be different. So you don't have to have an orgasm, but there are some benefits to having orgasm. And if your body is working well, you know, some disabilities or some illnesses might lead to not being able to have an orgasm. But if your body is healthy and able to, there's a lot of benefits to having an orgasm. And some of those are, it reduces depression and heart disease, and also increases your immune system. So and also menstrual cramps. When people have menstrual cramps, when they're having their period, it can be like a pain relief for menstrual cramps. So it has a lot of positives. And sometimes people need to learn how to have an orgasm too. And that's one thing that masturbation can really help people with. And then the other thing that sort of brings us back to the movies, sex in the movies, that 70% of people that have a vulva and a clitoris need direct stimulation of the clitoris to have an orgasm. So the clitoris, or clitoris, people say it different ways, is on the top part of the sexual parts, a small, really sensitive part of the body if you have a vulva and a clitoris. And it's in the movies, you don't ever see that some people need that direct stimulation. So there's a lot of myths out there about pleasure and how people get pleasure. Next slide, please. All right. So this next slide, and somebody wrote, I thought I saw, do you get energy when you have sex? Which is an interesting question. So these are the different stages of arousal, meaning getting those sexual feelings increasing and increasing. And one of the things that happens is your heart rate can go faster than it normally does. And so that might feel like some energy there. Your breathing changes as well. And that might feel like you're getting some energy from that. So there's different stages, and there's lots of different models, but this just kind of gives you an idea of what happens when someone has an orgasm. So the beginning phase is attraction. So you see somebody that you think is really sexy or attractive to you, and you start to think about being sexual with them. And then the next phase is the excitement phase. And so your body starts to change during these phases, and you start to get more sexually turned on or aroused. And in the excitement phase, you're still kind of, what do I want to say? Distractible. So if the phone were to ring, you might hear the phone and it might interrupt your feelings. So you're getting aroused. A penis might get hard, a vagina might lubricate during excitement. Then you move to the plateau stage, which is increasing even more sexual feelings. And this phase, you are less likely to hear the phone if the phone rings. So you're much more into your body and not noticing what's around you as much. And that happens right before orgasm. And that's on this slide, it says climax. So that's orgasm. So it's the buildup of sexual feelings and then the release of those feelings. And then the last phase is resolution. So your body goes back to the way it was before you became attracted and excited and all of that. So your body returns. And like I said, with orgasm, there's lots of hormones are released in your body, so you can feel very sleepy and very happy and content. And some people can have multiple orgasms where they have one after another. And that happens where they have the orgasm and then they go back to plateau, and then they have another orgasm and back to plateau, but not everybody can do that. All right, so I think one more slide for me. Is that right? Yeah, let me just do a couple more. Oh, really quickly, fast. So just a couple other things. And actually, I wonder if we could change the slide. You know, we've talked about you need consent for all sexual acts, but there's also different acts can lead to different types of either pregnancy or sexually transmitted infections. So we'll go into that more next time. But if you go back to the last slide, it shows you the different types of sex that can lead to sexually transmitted infections or to pregnancy. But just to wrap up, so we have time for questions, The ways to have safer sex, because we're talking about safety, are to use birth control if you're having vaginal sex, penile vaginal sex, sexually transmitted infection protection like condoms and dental dams, and we'll talk more about that. Get consent, like we said, and know the age of consent, and making sure people are able to consent. So if somebody is, you know, under the influence of alcohol and is passed out, they cannot consent. You want to be in a private place. And both pleasure and safety, you need to be able to communicate and say what you like and don't like as far as pleasure, but also how to protect yourself and your partner, being able to talk about it. So I think I'll end there and we can move on to the question part.
Perfect. Thank you, Erica, Catherine, and Max. So Lindsay has been compiling questions, so I'm going to turn my mic on mute and I'm going to let Lindsay ask our panelists some of the questions that have come in today. Please know that if we do not get to your question, we are going to add it to our list. And from that, we do use that information for our upcoming webinar. So I will be quiet. Lindsay?
Yes, I do know we don't have a lot of time today. I want to start with the question of how do you know if you want to have sex? And how do you know if you decide to have sex?
Want to take that one, Max?
I was kind of thinking. I think it. You want to lead off that one?
Sure, yeah. So the question was, how do you know if you want to have sex? Meaning, like, is the question, are you ready to have sex? Is that
the
kind of the question? Or
the follow-up was the follow-up was how do you know if you decide to have sex? So I think that's knowing if
okay, yeah.
Decide
Yes,
is,
yeah.
okay. That kind of makes we were just curious. Decide. I think it just comes down to the person that you consent with, and it's agreed upon between you and the person that that you're in a relationship or want to have sex with no force, no pressure, nothing like that. It's just consent with done the right, like the way that's safe. I think that's the best answer I can give.
And I think too, if we ask the question, why do people have sex? And there's lots and lots of different reasons. So it might be because they feel aroused. It might be because they're afraid they're going to lose their partner. It might be because their parents told them not to and they want to show them who's in charge. There's all kinds of reasons. So it's really thinking about those different reasons and what's okay for you. When would you be ready? We can't really answer it, right? It's more personal. Would you want to be married? Would you want to have a respectful relationship? Would you, what are the things you would want? And that would be when you're ready. That would tell you what you would need and know when you're ready.
Yeah.
And I think we have time for one more question. So the other one that I received was when Max said that some states do not allow people with intellectual disabilities to consent. How would you advocate for that? And how can someone self-advocate to and engage in intercourse while avoiding breaking the law?
Well, there are plenty of ways to do it, but I would say if you know or if you can get a lawyer, go to a lawyer about that. I would also, this is why I think it's also important to have a talk with, people that you trust, like maybe your family, unless somehow there's maybe a disagreement with your family. I think that honestly, know that it is your right to have, it's a violation of human rights if people tell you can't have sex. And I think you should look into that. But I think that going through, I know legal process can be a little bit hard because it's intimidating, but I think if there's a way for you to, kind of go forth with that, really, I would encourage that.
And then Max, I would just add to what you were saying, like participating in these webinars and getting information and education about sex and about sexuality. And this will help you to make decisions and make informed decisions about how you want to be sexual and what type of sexual activity you want to participate in or partake in. You know, if you want to be by yourself and masturbate, or if you want to be in a relationship with someone else and be sexual with someone else. So starting here, for example, and having a platform to ask your questions, and having you know, a way that you can like I said, watch these webinars and get answers. This is a start. So then when you're advocating for yourself, then this is a way to tell people what you want and what you want your, you know, sexuality to look like.
That's why we do these webinars.
Great, thank you all. It's coming right up on 3 o'clock, so I didn't know if we wanted to go ahead and wrap it together, and I can keep the rest of these questions for our upcoming webinar. I know within our slides we've already planned the number 3 sexual self-advocacy talk for December. So maybe we can pull that up and take this last minute to do a plug for joining us again at the end of the year to continue this conversation.
Yeah, I think
Right.
Anna, oh, sorry, Max, you go.
No, I just said, all right.
I think Anna is pulling up that last slide where we have the information. Our next webinar will be on December 6th, and we'll be again joined by Erica, Catherine, and Max, who will be talking about more questions that we have come in, maybe getting more into the safety, sexually transmitted infections, pregnancy, some of those dynamics also that come along with sexual health. There will also be sending out a link in the chat box for an evaluation of today's webinar and feedback for us and our panel. We would love for you to take that. I think Anna just put that up right now, and I think the slide is coming up. We already have the link to register, so we want to encourage as many people to participate in that as well. Any last words from our panelists?
Thank you all for hanging out with us.
Yeah, thank you for
your questions
coming on and, you know, learning, and hope you can come on next time.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you again to our panelists, and just know that if you had a chance to download the slides, the resources Erica had talked about, there are several slides on resources, so please look at those if you need. If you haven't gotten those, please reach out to me or Lindsay, and we'll make sure that that you guys are able to access the slides. And I'll put my email in the chat box as well. Anna, anything else from your end?
No, thank you everyone for attending, and I put the registration for the next chat and the survey for today's webinar in the chat box. So both those informations are there. And thanks everyone for joining us. Have a great rest of your week.